what we released today is just kind of another step in kind of the federation story where you can join across multiple sources. Introduce GraphQL Joins that now allows you to kind of add metadata relationships to be able to join across GraphQL services. So it's actually the way that we think about it, it's like GraphQL to X. So you can do GraphQL to GraphQL. You can also do GraphQL to database. So this kind of opens up a whole set of things that you can start doing with Hasura. I'll just talk a little bit about conceptually how it's built and then maybe some use cases. So the idea is really simple. You'll have object types in kind of one part of your GraphQL schema or in a remote schema that you've added to Hasura. And what you can do then is link the any scalar field, right? The value of that automatically can become an argument into another resolver that's there in a different GraphQL schema, or can then become a way to kind of select something from a data source as well. And that then allows you to basically create join types so that you can federate across multiple sources. Now, 3 use cases that we've been working on over the last few months with some users that I think will be very impactful. So the first is just the way that some of you may be using actions where you might have custom mutations or queries. You can now write custom mutations or queries in your GraphQL service and return a reference to a type that is in the database so that Hasura can then query that, right? So if, for example, you can have, I think one of the, for example, if you have like a order that you're placing or selecting, and that's kind of coming from a different source, that can return a reference to a customer ID, but your GraphQL server does not have to return the customer type. It just has to return customer ID, and that can then be connected to a customer type that is actually coming in from your database, right? So that kind of becomes one set of use cases for enhancing your existing system with adding more business logic or connecting existing GraphQL services. Then, of course, it's kind of the more traditional use case with using Hasura as kind of like a GraphQL gateway. So just connecting in multiple remote schemas and then setting up relationships wherever you need to. There's a bunch of controls that allow you to namespace things or prefix and suffix things at kind of a root query level or at a per type level. That'll make it easy for you to resolve kind of type conflicts and stuff like that. Especially when you're kind of joining multiple services, especially if you're looking at vendor services, you'll have possibly run into conflicts like a user type and stuff like that, which is very common across systems, right? And then the third use case, which we recently worked on with a customer as well, was when you kind of have a pretty high quality REST API, and you can use something like Open API to GraphQL to convert like a Swagger spec or an Open API spec into a GraphQL API, and it's reasonable. A lot of times it's weird because the REST service is trying to compensate for GraphQL-like things, and it becomes weird. But in case it's not, and in case you get like a pretty good match from that REST service to GraphQL, what you can do is you can use Open API to GraphQL. You can use that plugin to bring in your entire REST service as a remote schema to Hasura. And the nice thing is that you can actually set up relationships within the same GraphQL kind of schema as well, right? So if you have like a /user endpoint and a /order endpoint, that's now become GraphQL types, right? Or you have a user resolver and a order resolver. What you can now do is connect those 2 types within the same GraphQL schema with GraphQL Joins as well. So you kind of get this instant GraphQL kind of benefit, and you don't have to do N+1 queries from the client and whatnot for existing REST services. So that's also fairly powerful for cases where you already have a good REST API in place. So those are kind of the 3 use cases here. Lots of details on this blog post on some CI/CD stuff around keeping the schema up to date, managing things like where you might have changes in types that are breaking or non-breaking and stuff like that. And so would love for you folks to kind of to try that out. Early release, so poke around in the console with the metadata, let us know what you think, what's easy, what's not easy, what's confusing, and so that we can start responding to that and improving the experience there. And one of the last portions here is also on, there's a little bit that describes how this query execution works internally, and how it uses the internal kind of query execution mechanism to be able to run that kind of federated query across GraphQL services or GraphQL data services. So super excited to get the early version of this out, and there'll be lots more that we'll be doing over the coming weeks. But do try it out and let us know what you think. We'll link you folks to the blog post in chat and to a deep dive session or workshop and a webinar that we'll be doing soon.